What's up with your guy? Your guy all right? What's going on? You all right? Hey kids, this is Ivan. How you doing? I am not all right. I have a splitting headache. I have not felt good since I woke up this morning. And so I even left work a little bit early. I'm going to go to bed a little bit, take a nap, and hopefully feel better when I get up. However, I've had this topic rattling around in my head since I saw a video last night by DarkAgeOf Roleplay Games by Jason. And he talks about the My Guy syndrome. And this is a subject I've thought about. It's kind of near and dear to my heart to a certain extent. So I wanted to make a response to this and kind of give my 2 cents or my perspective on this, because I think it's a bigger topic than one thinks. And so the My Guy syndrome is pretty much where you're going to do what your character does. You do something that completely goes against what the party's doing, in the classic example, that goes completely against the goals of the other people, maybe what you all thought was important, and the player gives the excuse or the reason, because it could be either. This is what my character would do. That's why I did it. It's kind of like Boromir in Lord of the Rings. You know, we all thought we had this one goal, but wait a minute, he just took the one ring, and what's going on, dude? Or, I don't know, like Cypher in The Matrix. What the heck was that? Who saw that coming? You should have seen it coming. But the idea that, you know, somebody pulls a fast one, that's kind of like some of the more classic My Guy scenarios, but there can be all kinds of things. Now, I've made videos about this in the past, about this schism. Like, I love it when this happens as a player, and I like watching it happen with other players. It's one of the most compelling and entertaining parts of the game for me, is when you have the schism between what you know would be tactically sound as a player and the actual motivation of your character. You realize that your character is being compelled to do things that, on paper, if you're going to be a complete tactician, don't make a lot of sense. Yeah, I personally like that. So there's a time and a place for this, and I really actually enjoy doing what my guy would do. But this topic brings home to me, or just really hammers home for me, the idea that it's very important, much more important than I would have really thought of in the past, because I haven't done this as much, that you sit down and you really hammer out, what are our expectations? What are our intentions for this play group, or for this game session, or for a collaborative experience together? What are we really looking for? Are we all on the same page? I made some videos recently talking about all the various domains or facets that you might have to look at. And I'm not saying you have to have a 5-hour session, but sometimes you have to be clear, like, what is your intention as a game group? So if you kind of violate this, doing this My Guy stuff, sometimes this, it's more like, I guess, genre poisoning, or going against the original contract of the group. I hate the term social contract. It still drives me up a wall. However, it's this idea. Are we all on the same page? Are we looking for the same experience? And we might need to adjust. So I think what the intention of the game group is incredibly important, and will influence or inform whether My Guy scenario is appropriate or not. What's your intention as a game group? Is your intention to follow some kind of planned story arc? And I don't mean that you're going to plan out every little event and every little scene and what happens, but are you going to be an exiled heir to the throne and his entourage as you seek redemption and return to the throne? Is that the character or the story arc you're looking for? Are you going to be a group that will sacrifice everything for a cause, to save their nation, to save something else? Is that what you're looking for? Do you have some kind of story arc? My Guy acting like what My Guy would do might not be appropriate in that situation if it goes against what the group is doing, unless you have a plan to have a Cypher or a Boromir, and that's part of your arc, is betrayal, the sudden but inevitable betrayal. Curse your sudden but inevitable betrayal. Love that line. Or is your intention as a game group to be a bunch of heroes that go out and find your fortune in the world, and over time become more powerful and take over a certain fortune, or just become big damn heroes? Do you have something that's a little bit more story driven, I suppose, but being big damn heroes, you have a little bit more of a plan? Maybe there's an artifact that you need to destroy, bring it to the other side of the world. Sound familiar? But on the way, your plan is to encounter more and more powerful enemies until you are, in fact, powerful enough yourselves to take on the big bad guys at the end of this trip, and hopefully fulfill this quest. Is that your intention? Then perhaps doing what My Guy would do might not be as appropriate. It might be a violation of the social contract. Or is the intention of the group to, say, discover what it would be like to be a group of smugglers or people that operate outside the law, looking for the next big payout? Something like, I suppose, like Firefly, or the characters that we were exploring a little bit in that Hollow Earth Expedition series. We only got so far, but guys that were operating a little bit outside the law. Maybe they came from different backgrounds, had different motivations, maybe some motivations the other players did not know. So, in a case like that, it might be more appropriate to have my guy do something that might be a little bit more duplicitous. Maybe your intention is to explore what it would be like to be the King's Musketeers in France, but in a France where things are horribly wrong. Of course, I'm involved in a group doing just that right now. And if you read the book, The Three Musketeers, you'll find these are a cohesive group of guys. There's a lot of loyalty, there's a lot of camaraderie, but they all have their own agendas. They all kind of go off and run in various directions at certain times and do their own thing. And I recall playing that game, the All for One game, because this is the group that I've had the most experience with lately, where things are gelling really well. I had a situation where my character Philippe, I did choose flaws for him, so I chose, it wasn't impulsive, but it was thrill-seeking and curious. And so these are things that could get him in a lot of trouble. These are things that could cause him to do what my guy would do that might not be in the best interest of the party, that could get us into some trouble. And I found myself during the very first session, our two-part session that Anthony ran, kind of holding it back a little bit. And so in between part 1 and part 2, I talked to the other players a little bit and said, hey, I was holding back a little bit because I don't feel like we discussed this enough. And given my concept of this character, he's probably a lot more impulsive, a lot more thrill-seeking, a lot more curious, and would run headlong into danger than you might like. It might cause us some problems. Are you okay with that? And the other players assured me, yeah, go ahead, go for it. Go play your character the way you envisioned him. So I felt free to do that. Had they said at this point, hey, we're not as okay with you just completely going haywire, then I would have had to adjust it, maybe look at the character concept. We would talk a little bit more. I have a real thing for playing characters like that. I love playing an impulsive character. It's kind of a quirk of mine. I don't play them all that way, but I really enjoy that shtick. But have to be careful. Make sure that everybody's on the same page and they're okay with that. Now, I'm okay with the other characters in that group doing what their guy would do from time to time. Like, I actually expect that Jean-Marie is going to fly off the handle and do things that are very impetuous and might actually get us in trouble should he encounter werewolves or the loup-garou of Orleans or one of the witches that he encountered. Stuff like that. I expect him to kind of fly off the handle and do things that might get us into trouble. I expect Martin to lose his precious composure should he see relatives of his and do things that may, in fact, get the group into trouble. I expect Briscourt to do the unexpected, to be quite honest with you, and act like a buffoon, much to the delight of Jean-Marie, and say and do outlandish things, and hopefully get us out of trouble with that charm. But that's what I expect. I expect him to behave in ways that might not be tactically sound, but are true to their character. We're really exploring those characters in that setting. So I'm okay with that, but we've had that discussion. And in general, in groups, I'm okay with that. In general, I tend to gravitate towards games where we're not following this big story arc. I tend to gravitate towards games, I played my share of hack and slash and let's level up and let's become big damn heroes. However, despite all that, I personally prefer that as we're doing that, we behave how our characters are, despite the fact that perhaps this might conflict with the tactically sound thing to do. Looking back, having the benefit of hindsight, we got lucky in the Lamentations of the Flame Princess game that I was involved in because the core group of guys were all on the same page. We were playing some relatively not nice characters, and we did some things that were not always tactically sound. But we got lucky that we all had an understanding it was okay for our characters to do things that reflected what their guy would do. And occasionally we had to make some adjustments. But we got lucky, despite the fact we never had a session 0 talking about that. We talked about the system. We talked about how lethal OSR was, but we didn't talk about that sort of thing. It's something I wouldn't have thought of at that particular time. So, I guess at the end of the day, my point is, I'm okay with people doing what their character would do, as long as they're not being a tool, and it's not vindictive. But it comes down to, like, what's the genre? What are we trying to play? What are we trying to emulate? There may be times when we're trying to emulate a genre, but that's really not that appropriate. Or there's boundaries. What is it okay for your character to do before you're screwing with us in some way, shape, or form? But I don't have that really goal-driven mindset. And I don't really have where you have to do the tactically sound thing, because there are groups that do that. It's all about the party achieving and overcoming obstacles. And I'm okay with, I'm not big into groups following some kind of planned arc, and we're going to pretty much act out what amounts to a Lit 101 story. I'd rather find out what happens. So, Yeah, that's my take on the my guy syndrome. You know, sometimes good, like Jason said, sometimes bad, but your intention as a group, not just as a player, is incredibly important. Got to be on the same page. You got to communicate.